Hello, friends. This is Marc at Sound Theory Studio. Hope you're doing well. I wanted to make a video today and talk a little bit about proper practice. Now, a lot of people think when practicing, all they really need to do is just practice, just the act of practicing, just sitting there playing guitar, maybe working on something. But not a lot of people really put a lot of thought into the right way to practice and a really structured practice. Now, what I tell my students is there's three main things to focus on when learning guitar. One is technique, the next is music theory, and finally, proper practice. Now, what do I mean by proper practice? Well, I mean more than just the act of practicing. I mean practicing in the right way, okay? Now, a lot of times I think people practice for fun, maybe is the best way to put it. People practice things that they're already good at. So someone might, for instance, sit down to practice and they play a song they love that they've played 1,000 times and they're really good at it. Or they jam using a scale that they're really good at and already have memorized. Or they focus on a section of the scale that they already know. And they basically just try to have fun, and they think so long as they're practicing, right? But it's really not the case. And if you think about it, if you're just working on stuff you already know, you're not learning anything new. I guess you might be solidifying what you already know, and I guess there's something to be said for that, but you're really not making much progress at all. And what I find with a lot of students that come in and tell me they practice a lot, but they feel they're not really getting anywhere, 9 out of 10 times it's because they're working on things they already know how to do. And if they try to work on something they're not very good at, they quickly give up, or they get frustrated, and then they just go back to playing something they're really good at already because it's more fun. And then after a couple hours, they're like, great, I practiced for 2 hours. And then they wonder why they didn't get any better. And, I was guilty of this too, and if you're guilty of it, no shame, but it's good to know this and be aware of it so that you can fix it going forward. So let's talk about what makes an actual good practice routine. Now, one thing I want to talk about real quick too is that a lot of people don't have time to practice the way they want to. I mean, probably 95% of all guitar players will tell you, yes, I practice, but not as much as I would like to practice. I think we'd all like to practice 6 to 8 hours a day, right? But, a lot of times if you have a full-time job, if you have kids, all kinds of other things going on, sometimes if you can get a half hour a week in, you feel pretty good about it. Other people, it's a couple hours a day, but I think all of us can agree we wish we could practice more than we do. Well, that's normal and that's okay. And what you need to do then is make sure that the time you spend practicing is spent really well. And I'm going to tell you how to do that. So the first thing you want to do is you need to be a little selfish with your time. I'll tell you a really quick story that is actually very important. So I've had students who told me they just didn't have time to practice basically at all. Now, these same people probably get up in the morning and have a cup of coffee and read the news, right? Come hell or high water, they're going to read the news and have their cup of coffee first thing in the morning, okay? Or maybe Thursday night, they're going to watch a movie with their kids. That's a Thursday thing. And Saturday morning, they're going to mow the lawn. They do it every Saturday. And nothing gets in the way, nothing stops it. It's habit, it's what they do. And then they turn around and say they have no time to practice. Well, what I want to say to you is if you feel this way, and if you're one of these people, you make time for things that you need to make time for. You've done it your whole life, be it mowing the lawn, hanging with your kids, doing whatever, having your cup of coffee in the morning. Well, if you have time for all that, I'm sure you have time to play guitar too. And you have time to practice, especially if the guitar is something that means a lot to you, then you need to make time for it. You need to put it in that category of this is something that has to be done. It's not something that's optional that I'll just do at the end of the week if there's time after everything else that I do with my life. That's no good. Guitar needs to be something that is just as important as everything else to you and gets the time that it needs. And a lot of people who say they don't have time for guitar and they don't have time to practice, turns out they really do. They're just not prioritizing guitar high enough in their life like they would something else. So examine your schedule and make sure that you're not one of those people. And if guitar is important to you and it's something you want to do, then you need to take it seriously, and you need to make your practice time count, and you need to schedule it every week at a certain time. And even if it's a short amount of time, that's okay. It needs to be on a schedule. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you guys. Make it a schedule. Don't like, one thing I can tell you is, if I had a choice between telling you to practice 3 hours a week at random times, just whenever you get a chance, or practicing 1 hour a week at a set time, I would much rather you did the 1 hour a week. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm hoping you can put in more than an hour a week, because that's not going to give you a whole lot of progress. But just as an example, I would go for the 1 hour instead of the 3 if it was at a set time and a set schedule, because what we're going to talk about today is how important it is to have a structured routine, and how that structured routine makes you learn so much faster than just maybe 3 times as much practice as far as time, but not structured. It's not going to be as effective. So, with that said, let's talk about what you want to do with your practice time to make it valuable. The first thing is, you need to practice things that you're not good at, okay? When I sit down to practice, if someone were to sit here listening to me, they would probably think I'm not a very good guitar player, and that's kind of a good thing, because I'm not going to sit here and practice things that I'm great at and sound amazing all the time, because I'm not going to get any better, right? I'm going to sit here and practice things that I'm not good at. You know, I like jazz, and I've taken jazz classes, and I'm okay at it, but I don't consider myself to be a great jazz player, and I'd like to be someday. So I'm going to work on a lot of jazz during my practice time. I feel like I'm an excellent heavy metal player. I've been doing it for like 20 years. So I don't spend a whole lot of time practicing heavy metal right now, because my ultimate goal is to be a well-rounded guitar player. So I'm going to work on the genres I'm no good at. I've never even tried bluegrass. So one of these days I'll probably try to play some bluegrass, because that's going to make me so much better working on things that I'm not any good at, as opposed to all these genres I've been playing my whole life. And even within genres, you can say the same thing. Let's say I do want to work on some heavy metal today. Well, you know, I'm really good at picking, I'm really good at my rhythm, I'm really good at writing leads. But I could think of some things, you know, that maybe I'm not so great on. Well, I'm a really solid sweep picking player, but I look at guys like Yngwie Malmsteen, and it's like, you know, he's at a different level. The guy's just amazing. So I think, okay, that's something I'd like to improve on. So you saw at the beginning of this video, I was working on a little bit of sweep picking, just getting warmed up. So the point is, always work on something that you need to improve on, something that you consider to be a weakness of yours. Don't be afraid of your weaknesses. Hit them head on. I really can't stress that enough, because so many people sit down to play, and let's say you're a terrible sweep picker, for instance. You know, it's tempting to sweep pick for like 5 minutes, get frustrated because you don't feel like you're going anywhere, and then start doing something you're really good at because it's more fun. Don't let that happen. You got to rope, like, your attention starts to wander, right? You got to rope it back in and keep working on the thing that you don't feel like you're good at, or something that maybe you are good at, you just want to get better. Whatever you're working on that day. Don't let your attention wander, because it will. After a few minutes, you're going to start to think about other things. You're going to start to think about other techniques, other songs. You might start thinking about work tomorrow. Who knows what you're going to start thinking about, but it will happen, and you have to train your mind to bring it back in and focus completely on what it is you're trying to accomplish. And you're going to see a lot of progress if you're able to do that for an hour. I would say a good hour on one topic. You'll see some good progress. Now, in addition to working on things that you're not good at, let me talk about how to actually go about that practice time. Now, you heard at the beginning of this video, I had a drum track going. Now, you should always, whether you're warming up like I was, or you're deep into your practice and you're working on some really complex things, you always want to have time going. That's my personal opinion. Timing is really everything in music, right? And so you should always play to a metronome, always. And you've probably heard this a million times, but it's worth repeating because it's that important. People who don't practice to a metronome play out of time. It's that simple. They might play fast, they might play with emotion, they might have everything down that is good about guitar playing that everyone strives for, but their timing will probably be all over the place. You can't get really good at timing with every technique you work on unless you play with a metronome. Now, one thing I want to say about the metronome, though, is I'm not a huge fan of the click, click, click metronome. It works and it's okay, and if you want to use that, that's fine. But I've always felt, no one goes on stage and plays to a click. I don't care if you're a classical guitarist, you're on stage by yourself, perhaps, for that, doing a solo performance. There's no clicking going on. Or if you're in a rock band or a metal band, there's no clicking there either. You're listening to a drummer. So in any case, I'm just not a huge fan of the clicking metronome. I like to play to drums. Now, I guess in the case of a classical guitarist, there wouldn't be drums live. Maybe for them, clicking is good, the clicking metronome. But, for most of us, we're training to eventually be in a band, and the timing will most likely be kept by a drummer. So if that's your goal, if that's the kind of music you're into, you should play with drums. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this. One is on YouTube. If you type in drum backing tracks or drum tracks and then set a metronome, like say drum track 100 beats per minute, you'll find drummers who are nice enough to do like a 5 to 10 minute loop of them playing drums at that speed. The downfall to that is if you want to bump it up to say 102 beats per minute, you're probably not going to find a video for that. It's kind of in increments of 5 or 10. But there is a program out there that I highly recommend that is perfect for this, and it's what I used at the beginning of the video. It's called Easy Drummer. Now, if you haven't heard of Easy Drummer, it's an amazing program. It's one of my favorite music-related programs of all time. I'm certainly no drummer. I know a lot of drummers, but I don't have one just sitting here in the studio ready to play drums for me for 2 hours while I practice. So, if you want to play the drums, you're going to need, a program like this to have that available anytime you need it. Now, the way Easy Drummer works is it basically shows you a drum set, and it comes with all kinds of different drum loops to choose from in all kinds of genres. And you can set your tempo to anything you like and set up the genre you want, and then just basically hit play. If you've used the program, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't used it, it's pretty simple to figure out. I highly recommend buying it. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, but it's something you'll use probably for the rest of your life. It's great for writing songs too. But I'm a big fan of practicing to drums. Guitar players play to drummers, so practice to drumming too. It'll really help. Now, here's the other thing to do about going about getting faster, practicing correctly with time, is after you have your metronome or your Easy Drummer or whatever you're going to use. You've probably heard this before too, but it bears repeating. You need to play slow. Now, let me explain to you why it's so important, because you hear it over and over on the internet. Start slow, play perfect, play cleanly, and then slowly speed up. Well, it makes sense, but let me really enforce in your mind why that is so important, and you don't want to skip that. So let's say, for instance, you have to change your password for your email, or you have a computer at work and it makes you change your password every month. So you come up with a new password, and then you type your new password, right? And you type it kind of slow. It's your first time, typing this new word or whatever. Well, as the days go on and as the weeks go on, you're typing this over and over and over and over every time you log in to your email or whatever it is. And the next thing you know, you're typing your password like, and you're done. It gets really fast the more you do it. There's two reasons for that. One is repetition and muscle memory. But the second reason that you might not initially think of is that when you type in a password, you have to type it correctly or it won't work. If there's one digit off, if there's one letter off, you'll have to do it all over again. So people get really good, even people who can't type really well, get really good at typing their passwords. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed this before, but it's because of the repetition and the demand for perfection when you type it, or it won't work, that makes people get so good at it. Okay, so it's the same thing with guitar. So what you want to do is start slow so that there's no mistakes, and build up the speed from there through repetition and that demand for perfection. So that's where people run into problems with guitar, is with a password, you have no choice but to type it correctly. So that gets enforced in you, that perfection of the typing the password early, right? But with guitar, What happens, and where a lot of people get into trouble, is that if you don't demand that perfection of yourself, then you can get away with it. So say for a second, you can type your password so long as you're within 1 or 2 digits, it'll let you into your email. Well, think about what would happen. So long as it's close, it's good enough. You'd make a lot more mistakes typing it in, right? So let's say your password is 12345. So you type 12335. You hit the 3 twice accidentally, and it'll let you in because that's close enough. Well, you're not going to be typing your password perfect every time under that situation. And it's the same with guitar. If you're okay with playing something and not having it be perfect, and you just say, well, I played it really close, and it sounded pretty good to me, and that's your standard, then you're going to play sloppy forever. Okay? So you need to play perfect. You need to slow down to a speed where you can play it clean and absolutely perfect, and demand that every time you play it. Don't move on until it's been played perfectly, maybe 10 times in a row. Then speed up the metronome a little bit and demand that same perfection. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to form the muscle memory, which is going to allow you to play faster and faster and faster, but you're also going to be playing really cleanly and perfectly every time. That's the goal. So that's how you want to go about practicing and building speed. Now, the other thing that's really important about practice, and it's kind of the last thing I'll say about it for now, is you really want to track your practice times. Okay? So let's say, and we'll not only track them, but schedule them and plan them. So let's say you practice 3 times a week. Let's say you practice Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So what you want to do is you want to write down or log on your computer, however you want to do it. You want to log exactly what it is you're going to work on. So let's say this week I'm going to work on 2 hours of jazz improvisation. I'm going to work on 2 hours of sweep picking, and I'm going to learn a Yngwie Malmsteen song in there maybe. And then let's say for the third practice you want to brush up on your music theory. You want to build scales in your head, something like that. So what you do is you write down the things that you think you want to work on that week before you have your first practice. Plan it. Then, when you practice, know exactly what you're going to work on and for how long you're going to work on it, and stay focused on it. Then when you're done with your practice, take some notes about how you did if you feel like doing that. You could say, I worked on my music theory for an hour, and I feel like I have the sharp keys memorized. Now I need to work on the flat keys. Something like that. Then next week when you come back to it, you can see exactly where you left off and continue. And I'm telling you, this kind of structured practice is how people go from amateur guitarist to pro guitarist. I don't care who you are. I don't care who it is. Anyone who is a really, really accomplished good guitarist has a structured practice routine. They don't waste time practicing, and they practice as much as they can on a structured basis every week. Guarantee you, people who don't succeed in guitar just play whenever there's time, no structure to it at all. And when they sit down to practice, they waste a lot of time by just jamming some old songs they've played a million times or working on a technique they're already good at. And they don't really go anywhere. And then they wonder why, because when they look back at their practice, they put in so many hours and nothing happened. And that's the reason. So, let me tell you how you can log your practice. Now, if you're one of my students, you can log your practice on the website. Every student I have gets their own website, and there's a practice tracking journal log on the website that works really well for this. Now, if you're not one of my in-person students, and I also teach online, so you can be a student anywhere in the world through Skype, but if you're not one of my students, there's a couple apps you can use that are really nice. One is for the iPhone. Actually, they're both for iOS. It's called Music Journal, plain and simple, pretty straightforward. And it's and just like the name, it's a pretty straightforward app. You just type in what you worked on that day, the time. I believe it does have a metronome in it, and I believe it does have a stopwatch, so you can just hit start when you start practicing and then end when you're done. Or you can just enter a practice manually and tell it how long you practiced for. It gives you bar graphs. It tells you how much you practice over time, how many minutes per week, etc. There's another one that's very similar called Praxis Music Journal, Praxis. This is a pretty new one I just ran into about a month ago. This one is very much like Music Journal, only you can actually set a schedule so that, on Tuesday it'll show you what you plan to work on Thursday it'll show you what you're going to work on. And again, you can make notes, you can tell it how long you practiced, and it'll give you statistics to let you know. And you can set goals too, which is really nice. So you can say your goal is to make it to 100 beats per minute on a certain song, or your goal is to just practice for an hour, whatever your goal is, and you can even create custom goals. So Praxis is a nice practice log program, and I really like it. And those are probably the only two apps I've run into that I thought were really worthy. There's several others I've seen, but they were a lot of them were very buggy. And unfortunately for Android, I've not really seen a good practice app, which is unfortunate. But if you know of one, just let me know. Just put it in the comments. I'd love to check it out. So I think that's about all I'll say for practice today. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. And look forward to practicing. Take advantage of it. Structure it. Organize it. Plan it out. I'm telling you, after a month of this, you're going to see huge progress over what you might have been doing before, which wasn't structured, just kind of jamming and not really, accomplishing much maybe. So anyway, it's always really nice to talk to you guys. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. And again, check out my website. It's www.soundtheorystudio.com. If you'd like to become one of my students, you can from anywhere in the world. It's through Skype, and I also use Google Video Chat. Any video chat really works for me, and it'll feel a lot like this video, only we'll be communicating back and forth instead of you just listening to me. It works out really well, and video lessons are a lot of fun. If you live in the Tucson, Arizona area, you can take lessons in person, which is also a lot of fun. The studio is great, and the students I have are like friends and family to me, and we have a really good time. So something to keep in mind. Check out my website if you'd like to learn more about it. And if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.